Indie developer Slowclap's beautiful and mysterious new game Absolver is finally here, and at only $30, it packs quite the punch. Absolver's story is simple and very cryptic. From what I was able to gather through sparse cinematics and dialogue with a few friendly NPCs, the game takes place after a cataclysmic event called the Downfall. You are one prospect out of many selected to don a mask that, along with granting you powers, transports you to the ruined yet beautiful land of Adal. This world is small, but feels huge because each small area looks completely different. There are ruined towns, a coliseum, a harbor, a forest, and so on. Here you will fight through hordes of your fellow prospects in order to reach bosses known as Marked Ones that can be tackled in any order you please. The final boss waits patiently for any and all prospects atop a gilded spire accessible only after the Marked Ones have been taken down. This short campaign mode of about 6 hours seems to serve as a practice for the endgame. Upon defeating this final challenger, you will become a full-fledged Absolver and will spend the rest of your time challenging fellow Absolvers to duels or actually teaching them your own fighting style. Despite its looks, Absolver is less for heroes of Hyrule and more for kings of the Iron Fist tournament. Underneath the whimsical art style and adventurous presentation lie a truly deep and technical fighting game. Combat has such a smooth rhythm to it, and if you rush in like a fool, you will be punished severely. This and the campfire-esque shrines that act as checkpoints are where the comparisons to Dark Souls come in. But honestly, this game has a very unique feel which comes as a breath of fresh air with all the derivative gameplay mechanics in the market these days. The combat is free-flowing, with the only thing stopping you is running out of stamina or getting hit. And this feels so natural. Hits have so much impact that blocking may even make you flinch a little, and pulling off a successful dodge or special defensive ability will leave you feeling like a true kung fu master. You are allowed to select one of 3 fighting styles at the start that determine how you will play the game. They each have a special defensive ability activated by flicking the right stick toward oncoming attacks that reflect the nature of how the style should be played. Cult is the most powerful and easy to use. Its special ability Absorb lets you take a hit without flinching and regain lost health if you manage to counterattack directly after its use. Next is the balanced Forsaken, who can parry hits and leave opponents stunned for a moment to land a devastating counter. And finally, the lightning-fast Windfall. Its special ability Avoid actually lets you jump right over and duck under attacks and leave your enemies wide open. Along with these special defensive moves, each style can use the standard blocking and dodge with L2 and the circle button respectively. Any defensive gesture successfully used against an attack you don't know will fill up a circular meter that will unlock that attack for you to use when it's filled up. Defending will also build up a tension meter represented as shards on your fighter's back that serve as a sort of super meter. Once you have 2 shards stocked up, a power can be used that can apply buffs and debuffs to you and your enemies, respectively. What makes Absolver truly unique, though, is its combat deck system. This allows you to handpick each movement your character makes in a combo sequence. In reality, there are only 2 buttons to attack with. Square and triangle activate standard and alternative attacks respectively, but the ability to change between 4 stances gives you 4 completely different combo sequences. Some standard attacks will flow from one stance to another. Others will stay in the same stance. Each attack will always flow into the next one as you shift from stance to stance. Alternative attacks can be used at any time in between a combo to shift the fighter to another stance that then gives them access to the sequence that they have created for that stance. Also, it is possible to use their alternative attacks as a 5th combo sequence altogether. Now I know that all sounds a little complicated and I got really into detail with it, but this feels so simple and natural once you have some time to tinker with it. And I haven't even talked about using weapons yet. There are separate combat decks for those. Trust me, once you have a lot of new techniques learned, you can spend hours reworking and practicing your combat deck. Absolver features many more light RPG elements like leveling up and equipping gear. The leveling system is simple, giving you stats for strong and fast attacks, health, stamina, and a stat that affects how fast your shards build up. There are also separate stats for defense against sharp and blunt weapons and speed that are affected by gear you pick up along the way. There is a lot of different pieces you can equip all over your fighter's body, but the pieces mostly look very similar to each other. Absolver can be played without ever going online, but you'll be missing out on a large part of the experience. When online, you'll come across other players in the world that you can either join or challenge to fight right then and there with a simple radio menu that you'll bring up with L1. After you complete your journey and become a full-fledged Absolver, you can compete in best-of-5 bouts against random players in matches called combat trials. 3v3 matches and tournaments will be coming soon. If you've ever wanted to run your own dojo, Absolver will let you live out that dream with its mentor system. Players with the rank of Absolver will be allowed to create schools similar to how guilds work in other games. But the interesting part is that players who join your school will be able to use your combat deck even if they haven't unlocked all of the attacks in it. All in all, Absolver is great at what it set out to be. It's a very brief but very good experience, and there isn't much out there to compare it to. Many will take issue with its story or lack thereof and its short single-player campaign, but just know the combat is near perfection. Don't come to it expecting an emotional roller coaster ride of an RPG complete with moral choices and side quests. Come expecting a fight, a good one. My final score for Absolver is an 8.5 out of 10.